Who are you, and how would you describe your position or role in the photographic industry?
Okay, my name is Andrew Jackson. Um, you know, I That's a difficult question to answer. I don't know where my position is because maybe that's for other people to indicate where my position is. In terms of my own role, I think perhaps more activist, less photographer. I'm not sure. I've deliberately in the last few years try to avoid kind of commission-based work, editorial-based work, I think, and try and focus on uh, trying to develop personal projects, which I think reflect who I am as an individual and who I am as a photographer, and what I think focus on issues in which I think my photography can highlight. Um, my position, I guess, from an objective standpoint, I'm a photographer, I'm an educator, I teach, I've taught at a range of institutions. I'm a co-director of an organization which is designed to create opportunities for uh, racialized minorities to interact and experience opportunities within the visual arts. Um, I guess I like to see myself as a developing writer. I think I'm a, I guess like lots of other individuals, I'm in multiple places within photography. I'm also in the process of migrating to Canada. So, there's my position and role as a photographer in the UK is also slightly different to my position and role in photography in Canada, which is also in an evolving position. So I think you know, I'm in like lots of photographers, I'm in multiple places perhaps. And sometimes, as photography likes to pigeonhole and put you in boxes, other people will see me in different places and perhaps I might see myself, perhaps. I'm not sure. That was a meandering, loose, I'm not,
That's a fantastic answer. Thank you for being so candid, and best wishes for Canada.
thank you very much.
My boss, Wu Tang Clan manager, just emigrating to Canada. He, lo-
Whereabouts?
you know what? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We've done many shows in Canada. Okay, if you were a photographer beginning a career, how would you get into the photographic industry? What would be a good entry strategy?
Um, if I was starting in photography right now, I don't think that um, the institution and academia would be my path. I think when I went to degree did my degree in the mid '90s, it was still on that cusp of analog and digital, where you
Mm.
needed to have access to specific specialized equipment. You needed to have access to specific knowledge and information, which you perhaps don't need now. And whilst I enjoyed that academic experience, mainly because of the sense, if I'm honest, the sense of competitiveness, the sense of comradeship with peers and the feedback and there were waypoints and there was a finish line and there was a reason to make work, and that's really good. And for those 3 years, whilst doing a degree, there was an atmosphere where I could just totally concentrate and think about photography, which was brilliant. Right now, I went on in the last year when you were able to get things paid for. It was free in one sense. For me, from my background, to go into photography now and go into the through academia into the institution, I wouldn't be able to afford that. We're in a position now where the government are, they're reducing funding to specific arts courses. That's going to mean less places. That's going to mean more tuition costs. People from my background, my financial background, even kind of ethnic background, are going to be increasingly squeezed out of the arts. I mean, they already are, as it is. The arts has always been a middle class um, pursuit in that sense. And the abilities for me to enter the arts right now would be, I think, nearly impossible, and not even including the debts which would be incurred by the time I finished a degree course, and then thinking about how am I going to get over those debts and find work. So I don't think academia would be my route into photography right now, but I don't think not going through no matter how fantastic degree courses think they aren't the only sole route to photography, into a career into photography. There are other ways round. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but maybe I should, you know, clarify this and say I don't know if photography would have been my chosen path if I was trying to get into photography right now, because you know, the money involved to be a photographer, um, is, I remember my degree course, and you'd see the middle class students were rewarded more so than the working class students, simply because the working middle class student could go and off to different places and do works which were outside of their norm in that sense. And you see how the middle class student could communicate with the middle class lecturer, and there was already a sense of commonality and acceptance, whereby you have a conversation with your lecturer, and there's always already presumption about what your limitations are, perhaps. But that I did have a good experience at university, but the initial interactions were one that, well, there was a certain perception that they knew what my life was, and that wasn't the case. Let's just say, I was the only black person on my degree course, and as good as the lecturers were, and as nice as they were, there are still these unconscious biases, which, the the female Asian student would be pushed to do works about how stifling their religion is, or how they're stifling their culture is. So whether, even if that wasn't their position and their lived experience, so there is a perception of who you are sometimes by some of the lecturers. And I see every year towards the end of degree courses, I'll get an email from a black student saying, "Well, my teachers told me that I should talk to you, and can I ask you a few questions?" And they've been asked to talk to me because the white lecturer doesn't feel comfortable, feels out of their depth. And I think if you're a lecturer photographer, you should know a range of photographers, not just white photographers, not just European, Western photographers. You should be aware, because you can. It's not. There are successful black photographers, black artists, and if you're a white photographer who's teaching photography and you're unaware of, a photographer who's won a MacArthur Genius Award, then it's not my job to do that for you. And so you see that all the time. You see, well, my lecturer says I should talk to you because they don't know this or don't know. Well, they're getting paid. I'm not getting paid to talk to the student. So I'm probably going off on a tangent. Yeah. But, there are lots of good things about being in an academic environment, and yet there are lots of restrictive things also. And I don't know, if I was a student right now, whether I'd choose or be able to enter photography, let alone go to university.
That was a fantastic answer. Thank you for being candid and real. That is my experience, by the way. So, okay, everybody got to eat, especially if you're working class. But how do you get paid for your work?
Well, I guess it's like lots of other working artists. It's a spinning of multiple plates. whether it's teaching, whether it's running workshops. Did a workshop last night. I have 30 hours of workshops over the summer. Montreal. Recently sold some work to a museum. So it's a range of different things. I'm a director of a company that does its own kind of activities and whatever. So it's less about doing editorial commercial commissions. I mean, if they came in, I'd do them, obviously, but it's also funding, applying for grants and funding. That's going to be, if you want to be I saw, millionaire photographer Alex South talking about the need to um, apply for grants and funding, the needs to be able to proficient in writing applications and thinking about, what components are necessary. I'm writing a grants application to the Quebec Arts Council right now to do something over the summer also. And bid writing, grant writing has been a constant feature of my practice. If I hadn't written and applied for grants, I wouldn't have done works in different parts of the world, and I wouldn't have. You get that application, you get that money to do a project. Suddenly, a gallery is interested because the costs are off their shoulders, and well, if you make this work, and there's so, it's your ability to conceive a project, think of the components, think of which actors and organizations can be a part of this project, being able to approach, negotiate and solicit support into a project, write it down, do a budget, think of the timeline. The ability to do that and write an application will help you no ends as a photographer, as an artist. Right? So it's a spinning multiple plates. And but also the idea that I'm also working on several projects at the same time, might be 3 or 4 projects, knowing that only maybe one of them is going to really, in inverted commas, make it or get even accepted or seen as something important. But I think when it comes down to it, it's all down to you. Photography is a lonely profession. And it's all the decisions, all the choices, all the actions end up on your shoulders. It's a lonely profession, but it's also a selfish profession. Sometimes you make kind of life choices which benefit you solely, I guess. And so it is I'm not gonna say it's a narcissistic profession. Sometimes it is. If you listen to photographers who talk about their work and never mention anybody who's ever helped them. The fact that that photographer's gone to some foreign client, they've had a fixer who's negotiated contacts with them. And yet when they come back, they just talk about what they've done and their experience without talking about all those different levels which people have supported them, helped them, and so forth. But I've talked myself into a cul-de-sac now. I can't get back.
Well, that's again, thank you for your candid response. That's my experience. So there's a supplementary to that, but I guess you've already touched it. But do you need a second job in order to make a living income?
If you don't have rich parents, yeah. If you're not a trustafarian and you're able to travel around the world and get embedded here and there because mommy and daddy can help you pay for that, then without a doubt, definitely, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so photography has changed immensely over the last period, especially since the development of digital technology and social media. Yeah, you said earlier about you lived through that change, mid-90s, I kind of remember it. We talk about post-digital now, don't we, like it's over. It still feels like the beginning. But how do you sustain your position in this competitive photographic environment? And additionally, how do you see the future development of photography? And by competitive, I mean the amount of material that is published every hour.
Um, I think I'm maybe one of the problems in my own practice, my own career, is that maybe I'm not that I'm competitive, but I'm not that competitive. You know, everybody has to choose their own path. And if you if you have large archives where you want to put an image out every day and you get lots of likes and whatever, that's fantastic. I don't really feel comfortable putting work out there until I've kind of resolved it in my own. So that's just, we everybody has to find their own path in how they use social media, I guess. Um, Sorry, what was the question again? I kind of got off the tangent.
Well, it's, the tangent is because of the ubiquity of
Oh,
photographic material. How do
yeah, yeah.
you raise your head in that environment?
Um, I guess, you have to be visible. I think one of the things during the pandemic I spoke to friends was that you've got to get through this. Some people weren't going to get through the pandemic, because the nature of their business model has been affected to the extent where they can't go out and do the type of work they could do. I was conscious of the fact that no matter what came my way during the pandemic, whether it was paid or unpaid, if it gave me a platform to talk about my work and to be visible, you know, most magazines, they're not going to pay you to be in a magazine. It might be a great magazine, but they're not going to pay you. But anybody who asked, you know, I would be a part of that. Want to do an interview? Sure, I'll do an interview. And I think, it's you, in terms of the pandemic, was just about being visible. And if you're visible, you are in consideration. You're in people's minds. And if people know who you are, you can be the best photographer in the world, but if nobody knows who you are, then, your photographs only exist when people look at them, when people interact with them. And it's the same as if you're not visible, then people don't know you're out there and they won't seek to involve you in things. But it's a balance. Your visibility has to be based on the work that you're making. So there's no point just being visible for the sake of being visible. You also still have to be producing and making good work to back up that level of visibility. But I'm also not the best self promoter. And I would do things and not really talk about them to the extent which I do, because maybe that's just my personality. I feel a little bit self-conscious, you know blowing myself up and throwing myself spotlight on me. But it's something that you have to do, unfortunately, because the perception in the industry is that if you're not seen to be doing something, you're not doing it. But it's a balance that we all have to make. And right now, I guess I'm focusing on making specific works. And when those works are in a position to be made visible, then I will do all the old showboating and trying to get them into this spotlight and that spotlight and whatever. But it's a game. It's a racket, photography, and it's politics, it's diplomacy, it's all of those different things. It's about, there's no point being visible unless the right people are looking at you, I guess. There's no point getting 2,000 likes on Instagram if nobody's going to buy that work or nobody's going to show it. It's good to have an audience because people unfortunately look at how many people are interested in your work before they make decisions about showing your work also. So social media does help. If you have lots of followers, uh, organizations think, well, you might bring some of those followers and some of that footfall into their space or whatever. Or people might, want to, you might have lots of followers, so people might buy your publication or so forth. So followers do help your career. But I look at some people sometimes and it's like 6, 7 posts a day, and it's like, that's a business right there. And if that model works for them and they sell work, fantastic. But if you're just doing it to get likes, then
Mm.
and nothing financially comes from that, I don't know. But I'm not the right person to talk about social media because I'm not very good at it. I often piss people off or get into arguments on Twitter, so maybe that's not beneficial for a career in photography. Don't piss people off. Be invisible and tug your forelock to people, and you'll get on.
I love you on Twitter. I love you on Twitter. And talking about visibility, I mean, we're moving into a section where I want to try and platform some of your work as a practicing photographer. So I'm asking if you could briefly show and describe the strongest three images you have taken during your career.
Okay.
You know, why did you choose them? Did the audience or the client like them? Did you get paid? Or did it make a platform to strengthen your career? Whatever. You know, what was
Okay.
the impact?
I went full out and did a great presentation.
Such a professional. Thank you.
Uh, so I guess I'm not sure if these are three strongest photographs because I think, as other people have said, the strongest photograph is still yet to come. But I think these talk about my evolution as a photographer, I think. And at one point, I had this naive idea that I wanted to be a conflict photographer. I was I was wanting to be a photojournalist and documentary photographer, and I want to go off into the world and tell other people's stories, I guess. So I was kind of worked, took some images in a trauma hospital, emergency trauma hospital in Cape Town, and I kind of quickly realized, well, here's the thing, I don't really want to do this kind of work. And there was this, I guess, this particular image, I guess, questioned and challenged my own ideas of where I wanted to be as a photographer. Because, I guess, you know, I was allowed into the hospital, and the Dr. Timo basically said, you need to see how you've come to see how people live. You should see how people die. And he took me to the mortuary, and he left me alone in this mortuary. And the mortuary was just a tin shack, and it was about 38 degrees inside at the time. And it wasn't a good place to be to be a mortuary. And I remember shooting a roll of film, and I'd come to the end of that particular roll, and I was taking it out, and I was sitting on a gurney where the previous body had was remnants of it was still on the gurney, and I was sitting on this gurney rolling a new roll of film in, and I looked at this guy's trainers, and I remember seeing this big elaborate white bow he's tied just a few hours before, and I suddenly kind of, that was like the kind of the punctum that broke the surface, and I started to think about, what is the purpose of this photography? What is the purpose of this photograph? What are the purpose of me? Am I the right person to be telling these stories of South Africa? Okay, I'm a black man photographing other black men, but I'm an English guy. I have no real experience of living in Cape Town. Maybe this is a story that should be told by somebody who lives in this space. Because what happens is that I take this image back to the UK, and people talk about the aesthetic qualities of the photograph, and some people wanted to purchase it and whatever, but nobody asks who this person was or what happened or what the circumstances. People are asking me how I feel. And then I do talks, and then I end up talking about my experience, about how I feel about being in the space. Now, if I take this photograph back to Cape Town and show it to black people living in Cape Town, am I the right person to say, hey, look, this is your life? Well, they know their life, they're living it. They don't need me as an outsider to come in and tell them about their own experience, which is one filtered through my own. So, this image was that moment when I start to think about, positionality, about me as an outsider. And that kind of drove me to want to look at my own experience, I guess. And, sometimes it's easier to run away from experience and run into the experience of others. You have a certain degree of control over other people's lives through your sequencing when perhaps you feel you don't have any of your own. And, I started 2008, I started to do a series of works, one which is about, well, all connected, linked to, my own situation as a child of migrants from the Caribbean. One of those projects was a work called From a Small Island, which looked at my parents' migration from Jamaica to the UK, but also my connection to this mythical space called Jamaica. But also, I began a work in Handsworth, Birmingham, in 2008, which were looking at a group of young black men, and I've kind of followed a number of these black men over the years, and still photographing them now. And so these different From a Small Island was the first chapter in the work. The Last Days of Summer is going to be the second chapter, and the final chapter is a work called From Whence We Came, which looks at the desire for return to the Caribbean or to home. Return in the sense of both voluntary migration and involuntary. And I've kind of photographed a guy who had been deported from Southampton in Jamaica a couple of years ago. So all of these works, I guess, were the product of initial this was a grant application which allowed me to go to South Africa, and then a gallery was interested, and then they added money on top of that, and then that was shown at the Focal Point Gallery and the New Warsaw Art Gallery, and also Unit 2 Gallery in London. And this work was a commission from a local organization. Sometimes what I do is that I might get a small commission, which enables me to develop relationships and connections, which then I can then take on board outside beyond the initial commission and develop on my own basis, and then get further funding or further interest from there. Case in point, Montreal, I've been asked to do a series of workshops by a big organization, contemporary arts organization out there, who want me to work with the community. But then I'm going to take this smaller workshop and develop it into a bigger project around the whole of Montreal. So sometimes the smaller commissions, they might not seem to be financially fantastic, but they open doors. And then now this organization will support me in a bigger application. Mm-hmm. And then if you get the support of a well-known organization, that's going to help in that sense. Mm-hmm. So you have to, I guess, even when I did editorial commissions for magazines, you could also use that as a foot in the door to develop something bigger from there. You've always got to be kind of, in my position, because I'm not a wealthy person, I'm always going to have to think, how. Here's the thing: I was told that a quote about photography, and it was by an Italian photographer. I can't remember the name right now, and he said that photography is the pig, and like the pig, every part of it can be consumed. And if you have a small project, you have to make the most you can out of that project. And you might be able to develop it into something else and move it in somewhere else, or it might be that you have a big idea, but you have to do small 3 or 4 micro projects to be able to build this one holistic idea together. And if you haven't got the resources, you still have the motivation. And that's for any student out there. I tell you, what can be more useful to you than money is the self-desire and the need to want to do the work that you're making. I'm doing work about my own experience. Sometimes these images are of other people, but they're people who I share a commonality with. And a similar thing as you said, I'm not photographing anybody beneath me or up above me. I'm photographing people who are sharing my experience right now. And I feel that photography has had a complicated history with race, as to say, and continues to have one. Every photograph I take, I try, sadly, over 100 years later, after Frederick Douglass, who tried to humanize himself through photography, or W.B. Du Bois, as North American might call it, tried to use photography to humanize Black people. In 2021, I'm still in the position where I'm taking photographs to humanize Black people. So, in that sense, I'm not separate and apart from the work I do, because when I'm humanizing the people in the frame of my photographs, I'm also humanizing myself. And we live in a world where, civil rights and civil liberties are continually being given and taken away. Every 10 years, every 20 years or so, every generation, 25 years a generation, there's a factory reset. Trump was a factory reset of civil rights in America. Theresa May was and Boris Johnson. They are, factory resets, which are taking away, discussions about race and equality, taking us back into a time which isn't mutually beneficial. So, unfortunately, 20 years time, there's going to be another Black photographer who's doing the same type of work as me, trying to humanize themselves for audiences. It's so, my position is more that this is something I have to do. I'm not doing this. Oh, obviously there is personal gain, but it's also, you know, it's also a political act. I think, sadly, which is, as I kind of mentioned, still necessary and needed. So I don't know. I don't see, photography was never a hobby. Photography was never a jolly. Good things have come from photography. You know, I'm not, I'm not, because, I chose a path in photography where lots of friends I grew up with unfortunately took different paths, which didn't um, end up well for them. I don't know why I chose photography. Nobody in my family had any artistic interest or abilities. Still don't have any artistic interest. Basically have to force pictures onto my kind of family, whatever. So I don't know how I really became involved in photography. I'm glad that I did. Do I feel a part of photography? Not really. I have friends who are photographers, but I don't feel a part of the photographic industry. I don't ever feel that I was felt welcomed into the photographic family. But maybe it's not the job of photography to welcome me in. Maybe photography is like I think one of your last interviewers said it's a series of villages put together. I guess I don't know. I can't really explain. I have a love for photography and desire to want to do it. I feel I have to do it, but I don't. I yeah. I don't know. I'm going up at a meandering now. I'm not sure. But photography, there's something special about photography, and photography gives me the ability to share with complete strangers what I think and what I feel about something. So, somebody who's 3,000 miles away can interact. And I'm not saying that photography can change the world, but it can change how you feel, even if just for a brief moment in time. Maybe that's better than nothing.
Yeah, fantastic response. Fantastic. Okay, turn your screen off. I wrote about Du Bois in my thesis. I also wrote about you actually, but
Huh?
hey.
I'm on the same level. That's brilliant.
If so, okay, as a sage who's had lived experiences, but if you had a few sentences to give to a student entering the photography workplace, what advice might you give?
I think about why you're doing this. What do you want to gain from this? What's motivating you? Because if you can't answer those questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. And that maybe that might not be what a student wants to hear, but it might save you a lot of pain and anxiety in the long run. What is it that drives you? Why are you doing this? What do you want to say through your photography? Who do you want to say to? And if you have uh, an insight into some of those, maybe that will direct you who you need to engage with and what you need to do to get there. But I don't know, did I know that when I was a student? Perhaps not. But it might have saved me. I don't know. Maybe we learn from life is experiential. We learn from experiences, and maybe I needed to have lots of bad experiences and take wrong turns to realize where I needed to be. But what I am an advocate of is that especially in photography, we need to have a plethora of voices, a range of different voices. So even uh, black photographers, just because you might have three black photographers doesn't mean they see the world in the same way or have the same opinion on things. And so we need multiple voices. And I'm an advocate of always, trying to create opportunities. Maybe that isn't the right thing to do in a competitive business place, but try and create opportunities for as many people who look like me to have a voice and be able to share their opinion, I think. Because what happens is that, I'm not going to say any names now, but within black photographers, one person makes it and they want to be the only black photographer in the village, and they will bring up the pull up the drawbridge behind them and be the professional black photographer, not really helping anybody else or creating opportunities for other black photographers. And I think it's only if there are multiple voices and a range of opinions that photography will be inclusive and be a true democratic medium.
Amen to that. Lift as you climb. One of my favourite slogans. Lift as you climb.
Agree.
Okay, if that comes to the end of the formal questions.
Okay.
So the last one is: is there anything you want to add? It's open mic. Is there anything you want to say?
Um, you know, just to students, I guess, is make the work which feels important to you. Don't follow the work which is being made already. And, don't also believe that you have to travel 3,500 miles away to do good work. Your story is important. The story of people who live in your neighborhood and your block is important. The skill of a good storyteller will produce good images from any story. And there's no point going 3,500 miles away to some war-torn environment, because here's the thing: the best photographers are already there, and they have lots of insurance and lots of help to get out of jail if shit hits the fan. You don't, and nobody's going to be interested in your images anyway. So why risk your life doing stuff like that? Find stories which you have access to, which are meaningful to you, which you can see yourself within. I always kind of ask photographers, where are you within your work? And think about the stories of others you're telling. Are you the right person to be telling that story? I'm not saying that you have to be part of a community to be able to tell that story, but what are your intentions? Have you got the consent of that community? If the community hasn't asked you to take their photograph or tell a story about them, are you the right person to do that? Because you won't have the lived experience or the knowledge. Universities courses always push research, having an understanding of the subject. Well, would you have more understanding of the subject than a person with a lived experience? Perhaps no. So ask yourself, are you helping or are you hindering? Maybe your role is not to take the photographs, but is to create opportunities for that community to take their own images. Maybe that's one option. So ask yourself also, are your photographs causing harm? Because if you aren't fully versed on the lived experiences of a community, and you're not producing photographs to be seen by that community, but by other communities. Well, what is the purpose of this photograph? Are you just continuing master narratives, or are you producing a counter narrative? Are you helping? Are you hindering? So, there are lots of questions that we can ask of ourselves as photographers. But most of all, ask, why you're doing this? Who is it for? And I think that will kind of help you develop as a photographer.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for your candid responses. Fantastic. I guess that's the conclusion of the interview.
Thank you.